Hi peeps, welcome back. I'm Zen and this is the second video in a JavaScript series which is comparing variables and constants. Now, although it is in the JavaScript series, it's actually suitable for any programming language. Okay, we're going to be looking at the difference between the constants and variables and also naming conventions as well. So without further ado, let's get into it. Okay, so as you can see, we've already got Visual Studio Code already up and running. We've got the JavaScript test1 HTML file here, and then the JavaScript file. Because as we know, we can't run JavaScript directly, we run it through the HTML file to make our lives easier. Obviously, we need to be running it in a browser. So what we need to do is to find that JavaScript file. There we go. And like we did before, we're going to right click and open with Live Server. That's going to open up a HTML page, which is here. And like we've done before, we're going to open up the developer tools, which is press F12. And then we're going to make sure we're in the console bit here so we can read any errors, messages we might get or feedback. As before, what we really want to do is to get these sort of left and right sections on the screen. And as we can see by doing that, the Explorer is taking up a large part of the code, so we're just going to click on that window to close it off and then go over to the JavaScript. Okay, so now we've got our workstation set up. The first thing we need to understand is what exactly are constants and variables, why do we have them? Well, that's quite an easy one. Obviously, when we are programming, we won't know all the values of everything at every single point of the program. For example, if you are doing a game, the number of lives you may have left in the game will change as you're playing the game, as will, for example, your score or your health, or the number of bullets you might have, or whatever that game, all the things that are going on in the game. So because we need to have that, we need to have something inside the program in which we can reference those values. And that essentially is where variables and constants come into. They are what we call a name value pair. So we have a name which acts as an identifier, and then there's a value which is associated to it. There are two main primitive types, if you like, and that is constants and variables. And the difference between them is very simple, and the names sort of give it away. A constant is a value that cannot change, whereas a variable is one that can. And it's important we always get the right ones because we could have some issues if we don't, and we're going to look at those issues in this video. So in JavaScript, to create a variable, you've actually got two options. You can use a keyword called let or the keyword of var. As I said before, this video isn't based on explaining how to define variables and stuff like that. It's just to show you the difference between them, and the other videos will obviously explain those. So what I'm going to do first is create a variable called name, and we're going to assign it the value Fred, and then we're going to use a technique called console.log, which will come up on our browser, and we're going to echo out the name. So now when I save this, we should see over here, there we go, we get the name Fred. Now this is a variable, okay, so we can actually change it by referencing the variable name itself and then changing its value. So let's now call it Pete, and then we save that. And you see it doesn't change there because we haven't told it to print out the information again. So here we go. Now we save that. There we go. We see we get Fred and Pete. All right. So it's the same variable. It's just that it's been reassigned a different value. Now, one thing I should note is that you can see that the variable name, I shouldn't really use a real name, is lowercase, and this is strongly advised. Okay. And in fact, you can see it's a one-worded name. In this particular case, we'd probably want a longer name. So for example, first name. Now we can't have spaces in variable names because the program will think that's the end of the value. So what we use is underscores. So we do, oops, I'll try and spell correctly. So first underscore name. And this is called the underscore method. Okay. And of course I'd have to change it in all, both here, here and here. And the other method we can use is called Camel Case. And I recommend that you only do what's called standard Camel Case. And the way Camel Case works is that after the first word, the first letter of each word after that starts with capital. So there we get first name. And we can continue this just like we could have done with the underscore method. So first name of user, for example. And that's how you would do it. If this was the underscore method, it'll be first underscore name of user. It's important to understand it doesn't matter which version you use. Okay, if you use underscore method or Camel Case, what you have to do though is to be consistent. So once you've chosen your version you want to go with, stay with that. Okay. The reason why we don't use capital letters is very simple, and there's actually a couple of reasons. The first one is most programming languages are case sensitive. So a capital F in the first name of user will be a different variable completely to first name of user in lowercase. And if you start mixing your upper and lower cases, you're going to get very confused and you're going to create errors because you're going to think you're referencing a variable which doesn't actually exist because your case is around the other way. So keeping them all lowercase makes that a lot easier. Secondly, there's something called classes, which we'll come across in a few videos time. And when we create classes, the class name starts with a capital letter. And that's how we can, in our program, identify a class. Okay. And so if you keep making variables that start with a capital letter, people are going to get confused between that and classes. And when I say people, I actually mean yourself in 3 weeks, 6 months, a year time when you come back to your code, as well as other people in your team that you might be working with, as well as people like myself, your teacher, or anybody else who's trying to help you with your code and is going through it, and we know these conventions and we'll get confused because we think we're looking at a class. So okay, well, let's have a look at this class, find out that class doesn't exist. Or you might be writing your classes with a lowercase, and again that will cause us issues because we'll think it's just a standard variable. The other reason is constants always are in uppercase. Okay, so when we create constant, we have to use const. Think of it as being short for constant. Okay, and then you should do it all in capitals. Now again, some programming languages may even force you to do this, but most don't. When you write something in capitals, you're basically declaring that is a constant. Okay, so anyone who sees this now as a capital name, we know that that value should not change. Okay, to the actual program, it doesn't care if you do it in uppercase, lowercase, or mixed case or anything, it will still treat it as whatever it is. Now in this case, it is down as a constant. Okay, and like I say, that's why we've done it in capitals. Now, like we said before, constants can't change their values, and we'll prove that. Look, we'll save this, and we get an error. Okay, so we get Fred first because we declared it. Okay, so name, we declared it as Fred, and there it is. And then when we try to change it here in line 3, and it tells you here that's where the error is, again, you can't do this. Notice it calls it, type error, assignment to constant variable. Okay, so it knows it is a constant. And that's why it won't know to change it. It's not the fact it's in capitals, because if I change this back to let, turn it into a variable, lowercase. If I turn that back into a variable and resave it, see, it works. It, as a program, doesn't care about these capitals. These are naming conventions we do to make our lives easier. And this actually also goes to a criteria in this Unit 6 module where you talk about quality of code and stuff like that. And this is one of the things that's very important. And that is basically the end of this video. That you can see the difference there between a constant and a variable. A variable, you're able to reallocate the value that the variable holds. and a constant does not let you. I'll see you guys in the next video. Please don't forget to put comments, ask any questions you may need to. And this is Sam signing out. See ya.